So what is the deal with... I never really got into Balatro when it was first starting to get popular in 2024. I remember being in a Discord call with my friends at the time and them all playing this game about jokers and cards separately, but together. When I asked them about Balatro, all they would say in response was, "Balatro be ballin'." It wouldn't be until later that I would learn Balatro was made predominantly, if not entirely, by a single person. So, I ask once more, what is the deal with Balatro anyway? Balatro was made by a person who goes by the name Localthunk. In December of 2021, Localthunk had to use up their time off from work or else they would lose it when rolling into the new year. Localthunk had started their break by continuing work on another project, but they eventually lost the passion for that project and began development on what would eventually come to be known as Balatro. By January of 2022 and the end of Localthunk's time off from work, they were obsessed and wanted to fully immerse themselves in development. Weekends and time off from work were purely dedicated to a singular purpose: making this game. As an aside, Localthunk mentions that the working title for the game at this time was Joker Poker. I actually kinda dig the name Joker Poker, but Balatro does feel more marketable. In March of 2022, Localthunk mentioned something I feel is important for creatives to hear. They stopped working on Balatro because they were no longer inspired to continue development. Localthunk mentions the following. "I have been making games for about 10 years now, and I have been doing visual art projects for much longer. And a very important habit I have developed for creative hobby projects is to stop working on something when I no longer feel the drive. This is for two main reasons. First, it allows me to move on to the next idea without totally burning myself out on the last thing. Second, and more importantly in this case, it allows me to take time off guilt-free and possibly come back to the project later on without wrapping it in negative emotions." Localthunk would wrap back around and continue development in May just a couple months later. Teaming with ideas, Localthunk only just now in development began considering release of the game on Steam, saying that, up until that point, every game they had made was not necessarily for consumption. Games they had made were primarily for being shared with friends. There's an interesting detail Localthunk makes about how they decided their developer handle in a history of development where I'm pulling this information from, but if you want more details, I encourage you to check out Localthunk's description of the development process by following the link in the description below. In August of 2022, Localthunk had shared the at-the-time current version of the game with some of their friends. A few months later, one of those friends would respond with high praise and comments about how much they were playing the game. This sent Localthunk over the edge development-wise. This was the first time they had seriously considered the scope of what they had their hands on. Localthunk mentions this was the moment they wanted to prove to themselves, their partner, friends, and family that they could make something really fun and interesting. This was the turning point where development started including things like controller support and features more in line with a traditional video game. This was no longer a hobbyist project, it was a passion for creating a full-blown marketable game. In January of 2023, Localthunk and their partner needed to move to a new area due to a job offer the partner had received. This was the perfect time to fully immerse and focus solely on development. Localthunk had saved up enough money to be unemployed for a little while and took the opportunity to fully pursue Joker Poker. March of 2023 sees Localthunk officially outsourcing work, specifically hiring Luis Clement. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Luis Clement? Louis Clement? I apologize. Through the website Fiverr to develop the soundtrack for the game. Also, in March was when the name of Balatro was finally introduced. Localthunk provided a list of roughly 20 names to friends and was taking opinions for the official name of the game. Balatro was on that list, but no one voted for it. Against these results, something about the name Balatro stuck with our developer enough that it would have become the officially recognized name of the Joker Poker project. During March is also when one of Localthunk's friends mentioned the idea of putting a flame/fire effect over the score counter. Surprisingly, our developer was against the idea at first. I personally find that surprising because even I know about this fire effect adding another layer to the addictiveness of the game, and I haven't even played the game yet at the time of writing this script. Around early June of 2023 is when things started to change. Localthunk went on a lovely canoe trip with their partner and discussed the future of the game. Localthunk had promised back in January that Balatro was only going to be a priority for around 6 months. But now, things are different. Caught between two wildly different thoughts, Localthunk sees the potential for Balatro but isn't sure if it would be just safer to start searching for another IT job. Balatro had been in development for a year and a half at this point, and the game had 48 wishlists on Steam. By mid-June, Dan Giesling and other YouTubers have played the game and are spreading it via word of mouth. This ramps up the popularity of Balatro, and a publisher contacts Localthunk to discuss some options. A lawyer is hired, and multiple options are considered, but our developer decides to ultimately partner with PlayStack later in July. Something I think is important to mention here is that Localthunk writes about the beta testers and listening to their experiences playing the game around this time. Let this be a lesson to all game developers. Do not listen primarily to stockholders. Do not listen exclusively to people with money just because they have it. Games are played by people who play games. They are the ones buying your game, they're the ones who care about your game, and they are the ones who will think back on your game long after you stop supporting it. Any marketing professional worth their salt will tell you first and foremost to define your demographic. Who is your product for, and how do you get them interested in your product? Anyway, by the end of June, Balatro had 2,440 wishlists on Steam. July of 2023 sees Balatro expanding heavily. Localthunk officially signs a deal with PlayStack, a roadmap for publication and other language options is established, and Localthunk is now making enough money through the deal to pursue this game for the next year full time. Northern Lion has pitched the demo version of Balatro by Dan Giesling and speeds through the 50 rounds available in that version. Our developer, being a fan of Northern Lion, grabs his attention during the stream and offers him a key for the most updated version of Balatro. Apparently, Localthunk got some flack for this, but they mentioned they were thinking more as a fan than a developer in this moment. This would turn out to be a fantastic decision that boosted popularity and demand for the game even more. By the end of July, wishlists on Steam numbered 28,661. August saw a redesign of the demo in place. Instead of being round limited, updates are made to make the demo content limited, meaning that players of the demo can play as long as they want instead of being limited to 50 rounds. Another major note for this time period are discussions between Localthunk and PlayStack for porting Balatro to multiple platforms. Unfortunately, some details are withheld due to policy, but Localthunk mentions how this would be the bulk of their work in the coming months. September has a note I find personally important, and we did talk on this earlier, but it's just that crucial. I'm going to read this note verbatim as written by Localthunk. The last few months I have been very involved in the Balatro Discord server. I try and chat with players all the time, and I try to take their criticisms seriously. I feel like the demo and beta players knew more about how to play the game properly than I did, so I found it was really important to listen to what they had to say about the game in order to properly assess what I need to change or tweak for balance. To all aspiring game developers, YouTubers, streamers, artists, and platform-based content creators, take a page from Localthunk's book right here. The art and content you create serves to build a community. You want to build a community that genuinely enjoys or appreciates your work. When your community feels appreciated, they return that loyalty you show them tenfold. I'm not saying you have to listen to every wild idea your audience suggests, and I would argue that some of my favorite video games, like Rainbow Six Siege, were ruined by the developers listening to a portion of their audience that did not represent the majority, but it's something to consider. I don't believe having a parasocial relationship over the internet is healthy, but there must be a reason single-person dev teams have been popping off in the last decade. Just some food for thought. But by the end of September, Balatro has 49,791 wishlists on Steam. October has a fun miscommunication. Localthunk was ironing out the official 1.0 release with Playstack and what it would look like. Localthunk mentions there being 120 jokers in the official release. A Playstack employee later references the quote-unquote 150 jokers to the confusion of our developer. After ruminating on this a bit, 150 does sound better than 120. So Localthunk would end up designing 30 more jokers than intended for the official release. I've got to say, getting extra content on a whim like this is pretty cool. By the end of October, we have 77,380 wishlists on Steam. I did not mention earlier, but sometime between September and October, another person named Martin DeMeyer Martin was hired specifically to work on porting Balatro to multiple platforms. Localthunk has nothing but high praise to say about this individual and their work. Jumping forward to January of 2024, Localthunk has an anxiety attack while trying to relax and watch a movie. The stress of development having ramped up midway through 2023 is starting to catch up. Remember that all of Localthunk's time off from their previous job, including weekends, were dedicated to development of this project. They took some time off earlier in 2023 to recuperate and come back fresh to Joker Poker Project, but development on Balatro has been steady every single day since March. Whatever time off from actively developing the game Localthunk was getting was still tangentially related to it. That terrible news of the anxiety attack aside, there was a lovely event in January. Localthunk details getting sushi takeout with their partner and enjoying watching a Balatro tournament multiple streamers were participating in. This was a rare moment to relax and enjoy the effort put in the game thus far. The launch date for Balatro is announced, February 20th. Balatro has 114,977 wishlists on Steam. February of 2024 is the longest entry Localthunk writes about, and for good reason. Working overtime every single day appears to pay off. Critics get access to Balatro a day early, and our developer is surprised by the results. Expecting reviews of around 6 or 7 out of 10, Playstack breaks the news of reviews sitting at and above 90 on both Metacritic and OpenCritic. Much better results than expected. To quote Localthunk on the official release day,
"One of the moments that sticks out to me is the moment I first checked the Steam page for sales. I checked this page for the first time a couple hours after launch almost on a whim, not expecting to see any sales information yet, and we had already sold 50,000 copies on Steam. The numbers on that page made no sense. This was meant for just a few of my friends, and yet somehow all these strangers chose to buy it. The revenue on that page after just a couple hours was over $600,000, far more money than I've made in my entire life. By the end of launch day, Balatro had sold 119,000 units on Steam alone."
Absolutely inspiring stuff. A development cycle of December 13th, 2021 lasting until February 19th, 2024. Of course, updates have been added over time, so it's not like development ever truly ended, but February 20th was the day I imagined Localthunk's life changed forever. For better or for worse, through sleepless nights and anxiety attack and lovely streams watching this passion project played live, Localthunk will forever be known as the creator of Balatro. Just because this video is over doesn't mean our time has to end. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can always click on the channel to check out some more of our content. We make podcast, short-form content, and also some other long-form video essays as well. Don't forget you can also check out the description to find Localthunk's development notes and his full history on his development cycle. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll check you next time.